Guys, you haven't missed anything. As usual, I've just pressed record straight away, but we've just spoken about the fact I've had a speeding fine. But Vicky, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Would you like to do a little introduction for yourself? You're obviously from Insta and YouTube. Am I right? Mostly food. That's where I first found
you.
Food.
Yeah, definitely Instagram started with food. I think I just probably about 4 or 5 years ago was when I really got into health eating and nutrition, and protein, I suppose, was probably one of the main things. I discovered protein as someone who probably never knew how important protein was. And it's when I started strength training. And yeah, from there, I just started trying to make any kind of bakes or breakfast with protein in it. And
worshipping protein, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, I know, it's so funny. So I started sharing those via Instagram, really. But that's kind of, I guess, my hobby passion is, I suppose, nutrition and fitness. And my day job is working for the NHS as a speech and language therapist. So I've only got two very separate hats of what is, I guess, more of a hobby passion filtered down to Instagram and YouTube. And I've got a blog where I share my recipes as well. And then my other sort of passion, I guess, is my day job working with children with special needs.
Yeah, that's so nice. So we touched on the protein there. My boyfriend at the time, when I was like 16, I think, introduced me. I was just going into A levels, actually. Yeah, that's right. Because I started taking protein shakes into my A level classes.
You see, I didn't discover it until quite a bit after that. I would think it was even after university for me.
Really?
Yeah.
It was, I don't know about you, but I feel like in like the fitness world, there was some sort of like status if you carried sort of like a protein shake with you.
You knew what you were doing.
Oh, yeah, like
you had a protein shake.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it was something I hadn't even really noticed it as much. I hadn't even noticed that there was lots of protein products out and things like that. And it wasn't until I started personal training sessions, and I think the personal trainer at the time suggested that I probably should be eating more protein, because I was vegetarian at the time as well. Not anymore, but was at the time. So I think I became slightly obsessed with putting protein into everything.
I'm making a note on that. Let me come back to that. Oh, better not write it on my speeding ticket. Right, catch your not veggie. We'll come back to that. But, yeah. So and I'm similar. Like with the protein thing, like nothing. Like it was still a boys' world. Like I was getting my boyfriend at the time I was either using his, or I was I was literally just buying what he was having, because it was such like a new thing. But I've always been one to sort of like quite like doing things differently. So if the girls weren't having it, then I wanted to have it, if that makes sense.
And I think a lot of the branding and packaging was very much geared towards guys then, wasn't it? Like you didn't have now, I mean, there's so many different protein brands, and a lot of them are aimed at, you've got set ones that are aimed at females, or a different kind of crowd to your sort of standard bodybuilders that it was probably 5-6 years ago. Because I remember hunting for protein, and in the end I got some from My Protein, because that was the cheapest, easiest place to get it from online. But I think it was definitely something that you would maybe see or sort of associate with guys after a training session chugging some protein shake. And I hadn't even thought about it at that point in terms of actually incorporating it into meals and recipes, and it not just as a standalone product. And I suppose that's when I started all the recipes and things like that.
Do you think it became like a little obsession?
Potentially. I mean, when I started tracking, and this was probably before I started incorporating protein into my diet, I definitely wasn't getting enough. I was hardly getting any protein, really, because I was vegetarian. I wasn't getting much at all. So I suppose I went from one extreme to another of having probably quite a high protein diet compared to what I was having. And even now, I still probably have way more protein than most people would. Partly linked with the exercise and strength training I do. And actually because I do actually just genuinely love protein products. Like I am a sucker for a protein bar, and I do love adding protein as almost sometimes just flavoring to things like pancakes and porridge. And so So it probably, it did probably at one point become a bit of a session of I need protein, and if I don't have protein, I'm not going to survive. It did probably become a little bit like that at one point, and then I kind of tailored off the more I actually learned about nutrition, because I suppose that then I didn't know much about nutrition or macros or calories and what you should be having and what you shouldn't. And I suppose over the years I've gradually educated myself on that, and I suppose now I'm much more aware of actually the levels you do need and what probably is just excess.
So I remember, and I think we should really do it for people that don't know, you were really lean.
Yeah.
At one point, I remember you being really, really lean.
Yeah.
Was that pre-tracking or post-tracking? Like, what's your story with it?
Post-tracking. So I've always went to the gym probably since before university. I'd go to the gym, but typically would just do your standard kind of cardio machines, just do a bit on the cycle, a bit on the treadmill, whatever. Didn't really know what I was doing, but felt like I wanted to go to the gym and felt like it was a sort of thing that you should do. And then probably post university, once I'd come back to Newcastle after I'd got my first job, I then discovered strength training through just being in the gym, and a personal trainer came up to me and started talking to me about exercises I was doing and not doing. So it was very much, that was my introduction to strength training and bodybuilding style workouts.
Did they do the typical like PT smooths where they like walk around and they're like, oh hi, how's it going?
It was a bit like that, to be honest, because I think I was new in that gym because I'd just moved back to Newcastle, so it was very much like, I think this personal trainer was like, one of those ones who'd probably been there for years and straight away spotted me as someone new.
I've done my fair share of that.
Yeah, so but I've got to say I did fall for it. I fell for it all, really. And in fairness, I actually feel now I've got a lot to thank him for in some respects, but he introduced me to strength training, and so at that point in time, I was probably just a normal body weight, quite healthy. I wasn't overweight, wasn't under, I was kind of just the average kind of, size 10 or something. And I'd done a bit of lifting weights through, the Les Mills like body pump style classes. I did a bit of that. So I'd kind of lifted a weight before, but not in a serious kind of program way. And I started having 2 or 3 PT sessions with him a week. And I would say sort of a few months in, he started then talking to me about calories I was eating, macros. He introduced me to my fitness pal. And I suppose it just spiraled from there, really. I probably had PT sessions with him for almost 2 years, on and off, for blocks.
You were like his dream client.
You were his
mortgage.
I was well sucked in. I think because I found something, I absolutely loved it. And particularly at the time, there definitely wasn't as many women lifting weights at all. So I didn't feel confident enough to be doing that on my own, but I loved doing it. So I was just like, right, yeah, let's just spend a load of money on PT sessions. But I guess I started following people on Instagram. I guess this is about when I started my Instagram page as well. I started following other fitness people on Instagram, just sort of seeing different body shapes and stuff that I'd never even took notice of before. Your abs, your very athletic look. There was a lot of that on Instagram, well, still is. And I guess I started to aspire to look like that.
Yeah.
And I remember mentioning that to my PT, and he started going down the route of saying, oh, let's see what body fat percentage you are, which again, it wasn't something I would even have known anything about. And
you've completely forgot. Honestly, you've literally just triggered a memory that I completely forgot. I remember having a guy at the gym ask me what my body fat percentage was, and I did one of those stupid, pathetic machine stand. Did you do that?
No, I never did that. He straight away went into calipers.
Oh wow! I had to stand on one of those stupid machines and hold a thing, and I even remember standing on that machine and thinking, wow, technology is so amazing that you can tell my body fat percentage. The fact that I'm holding something.
Exactly. Where it's probably about 30% off, isn't it, or something? I don't think they're accurate at all, are they?
Yeah, and I would say he always told me that on this particular sheet that he would print out every time that I had it done, I was aiming for a C shape. Can't remember what it was, whether it was like muscle mass, but yeah, maybe like muscle, like muscle mass, body fat percentage, and something else. And I needed to get a C. And if you're in a D, then you're overweight. So my goal was to get like the big C. Like, I wanted like that. And that's where, God, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because that was definitely what then he told me my body fat percentage at the time, and similarly he said to me, oh, you know, it might be quite good if you could aim for this kind of level. And I'm not very competitive with other people, but I'm very competitive with myself. And straight away I was like, yep, right, I'm gonna get that body fat percentage. And I suppose I then got that, and, you know, got recognition from that, in a sense of, it was like, oh wow, amazing, like you've achieved that. And I did get lots of people commenting in the gym about how good I looked. Obviously, it kind of just fueled it all, really. And I started chasing lower and lower numbers of body fat percentage. I always felt like I was eating enough, but I think I probably I definitely overexercised at the time. So I was probably going to the gym about 6 days a week, because I always thought at that time more was better. The more I went to the gym, the closer I would get to the abs, to everything else that I was aspiring for at the time.
Yeah, and the tracking side of things, you weren't restricted. It was just like
no. That's the funny thing, I think, with tracking with me. I've never it's probably never had a really negative impact on me. Probably in some ways more positive. So I did start tracking, but I started tracking to make sure I was eating enough. But it wasn't enough what I thought was enough, if that makes sense. So I think aiming for around 2,000 calories, as in my head, and from what I've been told, that was like quite a big amount for a female to be eating. And so that was what I would aim for, but actually I probably needed way more than that for the amount of training I was doing. And I I got to a certain level of leanness and just maintained that for probably a couple of years. And I didn't even realize at the time how lean I was. I guess it's probably an element of that whole body dysmorphia thing at the time. I was kind of always striving for more. I felt like I wasn't lean enough, and this person's leaner than me. And
see, I was aiming for you. I wanted what you had. But I couldn't bring myself to lift weights.
Yeah.
In my head, that would cause me to get bulky. So I was tracking, but cutting my calories. And like, when I say I'm tracking, like, I'm weighing lettuce. I'm like upset. It's the first thing I think of when I wake up, because in my eyes, I've always heard you can't out-train a bad diet. So in my eyes, I'm like, I don't have the body I want. And I was very much like consumed with that culture of like, if you lift weights, you'll get bulky.
Right.
And then, so from my side, my whole focus was on MyFitnessPal and tracking. So that's why I find it so interesting, your journey. And I love it, because I don't know if you find it at the moment, but because I've gone back to training, because of everything I talk about on Instagram with that hate, I'm very concerned that I'm going to trigger people.
Yeah.
But there is so much out there that I've actually had to unfollow. I've sort of done a 360. To start with my recovery, I had to unfollow loads of fitness people.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm having to unfollow sort of like anti-diet culture people, because I know that their like sort of motives are 100%, but I don't necessarily agree with everything. And that's why I love because you know, like people say, I do think majority of the girls that message me need to take time off tracking, because a lot of the time they're tracking.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so refreshing to see someone like you. And my best friend Zoe is exactly the same. When she first started joining the gym, I wrote her a program and I got her tracking. And she has just sort of maintained it. She's not fussed by it. She's just like, it is what it is. Like she basically tracks to make sure she's eating enough.
Yeah.
And like, it's so refreshing. How do you think you managed to keep, I know it's obviously like some people might just turn around and go, well, I just didn't get obsessed. But like, do you think there was other things that helped you not become obsessed with the MyFitnessPal?
I mean, to be honest, I probably did go through a slight period of time where I did. I mean, not to the point of where I was really restrictive or anything. It wasn't restrictive about the calories, but I was obsessed with tracking it, because I felt like if I didn't track something, then it wasn't there. So I did have moments, but it wasn't ever probably to the sort of unhealthy degree that some people get to it. So it would sometimes bother me if I was going out for a meal and I couldn't track it, or I wasn't quite sure what was in it. So I did get elements of that. But to be honest, I think it was probably meeting my boyfriend.
Really?
Yeah, that's, I think, what pushed me away from being too obsessed about the tracking. Because when I met him, I was living on my own. So I had my own flat. I was cooking for myself. It was very easy for me to just track everything. And then obviously I met him and we were going on lots of dates. We were going out. He was cooking for me. And I think through that, I just gradually let go of that control. And then I would just maybe do it. So like some days I would just track out of interest, or I would track maybe half a day and not the rest of the day. And that for me didn't bother me at all, because I suppose I'd gradually, like I say, learned to let go of some of that control. And for me, it was never about calories. It was never about restricting the food. It was just that I just wasn't aware that I wasn't eating enough, really. And I became caught up in this, obviously the ideal of being this lean, and knew if I went much over that, I probably wouldn't be as lean.
Yeah.
But I never restricted to it like any kind of dangerous degree. And then even still to this day, I still track on and off out of interest. So I never really did it during my sort of HA recovery time, just because I couldn't be bothered to put in all the food I was eating, to be honest with you. So I was just like, not even going to bother trying. But then I did do it sort of maybe 3 or 4 months after I got my first period. I did start tracking the odd day here and there, more just to know what I was eating, because there was part of me, which again, it's a difficult one to sometimes discuss because you don't want to trigger people, and I probably don't talk about it too much on Instagram because I'm aware of the people that follow me. But I was wanting to kind of go from this large calorie surplus to more of a maintenance, not necessarily going in the opposite direction, but I wanted to know what kind of calories I was maintaining on. And if at some point I decided I maybe did want to lose a little bit of weight, then I would kind of know how to tweak that. It's more just to educate myself, I suppose, on how my body was reacting to calories rather than anything else.
Definitely. And I think, I don't know if you get messages, but I get messages all the time. I'll get sent like posts like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And I'm like, do you know what? Like, and a big one is, what do you think of my fitness pal and tracking? And I say it 100% all the time. It is incredible if you know nothing about food, because it's there. It's absolutely there for you. But once you know, once it's like going to school, isn't it? Like once like, for example, for yourself, you'll do it every now and then because it's like just like a check-in and a refresh. But you wouldn't do it every single day on everything, because you know, sort of like, you've been to school. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, I feel like I do know what's in most foods. I can definitely, eyeball it, as they say. I can quite easily look at my breakfast and say, oh, that's roughly however many calories. And I did that throughout HA, and I think that really actually helped the recovery side for me, because I knew what I was eating. I knew the calories I was having. So I knew I was always eating way above 2,500 calories. Whereas I know a lot of girls do message me asking, how did you eat that much? How did you know? How did you not track? But I suppose because I had previously tracked, it was quite easy for me to know that I needed to roughly have around 600-700 calories in a breakfast and a lunch and a dinner. And I could quite easily just say, oh yeah, that's about that, give or take. And I think that really helped me in terms of making sure I was eating enough, and probably got my period back quicker than what some people find.
Definitely, yeah, because I think I completely agree. I definitely tracked a few times in recovery, and I do really agree with what Rini said to me. And she said, well, what happens if you track and then you hit that number but you're still hungry? Do you go over it? And like, because she talks about, like, there is more to it than tracking, and I do completely agree. But I'm also not going to sit here and pretend that it didn't really help me at so many points of my recovery. And also in my life, right? I'm not going to sit here, because I don't know about you, but I find it very easy for people that have recovered or have got out of disordered eating to sit there and go, you don't need to track, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that. And it's all well and good you sitting here and going, like, it's all well and good me saying to someone, don't ever track, don't do this, don't do that, just eat in moderation, just do this. It's all well and good for me to sit here, because I've been through it. I know what's in all the food because I went through the obsession.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. And I do think it has its place. And yeah, there's definitely points, like you say, where some people can become way too obsessed with it, and it causes them to restrict, because then, like you say, if they actually feel more hungry than the calories they've allowed themselves for that day, then they stop eating. Whereas for me, it's just purely been a number. It's never been to aim for a certain thing or target. It's purely to give me the information to sort of roughly sort of see where I'm kind of at in terms of metabolism, and just what's maintenance for me, what's the surplus for me. It doesn't trigger me in any shape or form, but obviously I can understand why some people wouldn't go back to it, because for them that might trigger them, because they don't want to see how much they're eating. Whereas for me, that doesn't bother me. I just find it interesting to know. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to things like that, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm the type that listens to about 10 fitness podcasts a week quite happily, and I have done for years and years, because I love listening to all things about nutrition and fitness, and I love being informed and educated about it. So that's why I think I'm quite detached from it. I just find it interesting to know, oh, my body maintains on about this calories now. Oh, it did previously on this. And actually it's shown me a lot. It's shown me that I used to maintain my weight on around 2,000 calories, whereas now I maintain my weight 2,400-ish roughly. And it's quite interesting to compare the two, and to then sort of help educate other girls that actually you can eat way more and still maintain a certain level of body weight. It's not that you can only maintain on this amount that you're eating now, and it's understanding that process. And for me, it's just more education.
It's like science-based, and that's why I do find it really interesting, and why I really wanted to talk to you, because it is sort of like recovery from a different side, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your HA story then, like, were you on the pill? Did you know? Yeah. So am I right in thinking that you were mega low body fat, but because you're on the pill, you weren't to know anyway?
Yeah, basically. So as far as I'm aware, I mean, I don't know how long I would have technically had HA for, because I'd been on the pill since I was 16 up until being like the age of 30-ish, 29, 30. So I'd been on the pill for a lot of years, and it wasn't until probably the last year of me being on the pill that I'd heard about HA and started to think, and knew that, I'd probably meet that criteria with the level of leanness that I was and the amount of exercise I was doing. But part of me did at that time want to ignore it. I wasn't ready to kind of tackle it, I suppose. So I started watching like different like YouTube videos on HA. I started learning about it probably about 6 months before I actually came off the pill. Prepping myself for it, because I pretty much knew. I knew the sooner I came off the pill, I probably wouldn't get a period back for a little while. And then eventually I just was like, right, I need to come off the pill. And I think it was probably 8 months later, I still hadn't got a period, and I didn't know why. So luckily, I guess I was in a position where at least I knew probably what the reason was. And that's when I went to my GP just to get some blood tests done, just to rule anything else out. And that's when I first spoke about it on Instagram. I remember talking about it on my stories. This was during like the first lockdown, I think it was. And I was probably at my leanest. Because I think like a lot of people, I kind of I still worked a lot. I still went into work quite a bit, but I also did work from home, and I did kind of get absorbed in doing all these HIIT workouts, which I've never even done before. I've never been a cardio person, but because everybody was doing these live Instagram fitness workouts, I joined in that, and then I was doing my own home workouts, and I just kind of spiraled into just exercising all the time. So I was probably at my leanest at that point, and then the blood tests came back as basically just showing what I already knew, that my hormone levels were low. And actually I spoke to a really good doctor at the time who knew about HA and was actually quite knowledgeable about it. And straight away he said, this is what you need to do. He was like, he talked about it more in like a BMI sense, which I know is actually not always that useful, but he was basically saying you need to get yourself to at least a BMI of 21 and over or something. And if you get to that point, you'll probably get your period back. And I think I went home and spoke about it with my boyfriend at the time, and that's when I just made the decision that, right, I need to do something about it, basically.
Wow. And how was that journey of you getting it back? Was that tough?
Oh, it definitely was at times. It definitely was. But I almost sometimes, I find it funny to say in a way, because I know some people really struggle. And so I don't want to sometimes sound like it was a bit of a breeze, but I didn't find it as hard as I thought I would. I think I'd probably mentally prepared myself about it for a year. So...
But I think it's really important, like I said about the tracking, I think it's so important that everyone hears everyone's stories. Because I think sometimes we can, you know, like what you said, like you were sort of educating yourself about it. There might be so many people that are actually listening to this thinking, I'm on the pill, I don't know, or I don't have my period, but I don't want to get, and like we're like, I'm very open about the fact that it's not the easiest journey, but
no,
hear more from people like you know, that, you know, you've tracked, or like you've carried on training, or you know, you actually found it all right. Like,
yeah, I've got to say I did. I mean, I loved all the extra food. I think that, you know, I didn't find that bit hard. I've got to say the hardest bit for me was reducing the intensity of my training, and I did keep training throughout. So I still trained probably 3 to 4 times a week, but I did slash the intensity, slash the weight. I didn't do anything that would really get my heart rate up too much. I did a handful of exercises. I probably did 30 minutes to 45 minutes max. So I did really reduce it, but I always wanted to give it a shot of trying to get my period back whilst I'm exercising, because I just loved it so much. And I never exercised out of a place of hate towards my body, if you know what I mean. I never exercised because although yes, I did it partly because I wanted to be a certain level of leanness. I always enjoyed the process. I didn't eat too much and then go and exercise and burn calories off. I never had that kind of approach.
Yeah, there was never like a diet culture-y sort.
No, it was more because I did love it, and yes, I loved the muscle I was building, but yeah, I wanted to see whether my body could cope with me keeping that in, and I was always aware that it might not, and I was quite happy to take it out if I had to, but I thought, well, why not give it a shot? I've got nothing to lose. So yeah, I very much just halved what I was doing, increased my calories to probably way above 2,500, but I always knew that was a minimum to aim for. And then, yeah, 3 months later, I got my first period. So
that's cool.
And it was hard along the way, definitely with just daft things. Like, it's like, you know, things like changing, having to get like a whole new wardrobe, and it was more that kind of thing that bothered me. It was like, oh God, I can't fit into any of my jeans now. It's like,
yeah. And how did you find the weight gain process?
It was hard. Probably the first month was the hardest, because it did go on actually really quickly. I was probably quite surprised at how quickly I put on weight. I thought it would be a slower process, but I think it was just because I just I increased my calories by at least 600 per day, really. So it was quite a big increase. And so that bit I think was the hardest. But then once I'd sort of accepted that, I actually didn't find it too hard after that. And I'd set myself a goal of gaining at least 10 pounds. And so actually I did weigh myself throughout it because I wanted to see the scale going up. I actually found that it gave me more motivation to see the scales going up than if I just completely hadn't even known what weight I was, which I know a lot of people wouldn't do. But for me, I was like, right, yes, I've gained another 2 pounds, I've gained another 2. I think it kept me going actually more than anything else.
And do you think that's because you knew that you were at such a low weight? Or
yeah.
Because like from my example, I thought I looked banging, and I thought I was a great weight.
So I think I did know. Yeah, I think I knew I was too lean, and actually part of me did want to gain weight anyway. I just was a little bit stuck in this. And, you know, partly it was down to things like Instagram. I did have a certain projection of me on Instagram, and, you know, I would turn up a lot of fitness events and all those kind of things. You feel like other people see you in a certain way, and you want to maintain that, because you obviously do worry about what other people's reactions are going to be when you start gaining weight. And I think that's why I was so open about it from the get-go, because I knew if I wasn't, I would find it harder. So I told everybody about it. I obviously shared it on Instagram straight away. Talked about it. And
yeah, I think that's what saved me, in the sense of like, just come straight out with it. This is what I'm doing, this is what I need to do, this is why I'm doing it. It's shit, but this is what I've got to do. Because I think the more you try to do it secretively in your own, the more you're going to panic about what others are thinking of you. Because people, it's weight gain. Like I'm sorry, but that, like, it's bullshit if people don't notice the weight gain, because you changed, right? Like,
massively.
Like, but also, like, people might notice it, but like I spoke about it at one of my workshops, that like my brother actually turned around to me and was like, "You got chunky, Chloe," but like in like my mindset, where I was always chasing like skinny, that was like shit. But like to him, that just meant like fact. Like,
it was just a comment.
And it was just, and he was like, no, you look good. Like, you look, but his whole face, bearing in mind, like, me and my brother have only just started getting on, like, as we've got older, and he's had a son. So like it was like we were proper like brother sister hate. So like for him to then turn around and go, no. It's like him to mention the chunkiness. I was a bit like, oh, shock, typical Jack. But then he'd go, no, like, nah, in a good way. Like, you look good. And I was like, oh, he means that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, we're not, and I feel like you'll be saying, like, on Instagram, I'm never saying people aren't going to notice the weight gain. People have eyes, but people don't care about it the way you care about it.
No, exactly. And it's funny, it's only when you sometimes look back. I mean, I really wasn't aware of how lean I was until that kind of very end point. And it's like, when I look back at myself, I hardly recognize myself. And actually, I don't like that look at all. Like, I much prefer the weight I'm at now. And I am probably, 16 pounds heavier than when I was then, maybe, if not more, I don't really know. But I much prefer how I look now. I feel like I look healthier. I feel like I've got curves, I've got boobs again. It's like all those kind of things that I actually did want at various points in time, but like I said, I just didn't know how to kind of get out of it. And
that was the same as me. I feel like going back to training, because I know that you've gone back to the gym as well, right? Like, training's always been a big thing for you. But I went back to the gym after a year, and I was really anxious. I won't lie. I was scared about falling back into old habits, and I was scared about what people think about me. The personal trainer that once could do a shit ton of burpees is no longer doing that. And I was also conscious about the fact I hated weight training when I was in like before recovery, like when I was in like peak HA. And now, and I was like, what am I going to do? Because I can't do HIIT training, so I'm going to have to try to enjoy lift. I fucking love lifting weights. And the reason why I hated lifting weights was because I had no energy to be able to do it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm similar now. I much prefer training now as when I did then, because the difference in energy, strength, everything is just miles different. And I'm so much more educated now anyway, that I focus a lot more on form and technique than I do just about chucking things around that I probably did at one point in time. But my focus is different with training than it was then, but I probably still train at the same intensity. But the difference is, as I'm at a healthy body weight doing it, and I'm eating enough calories to do it. So, and I probably changed. So I did the usual, make sure you've had 3 recovery cycles before you increase anything. And then I did gradually increase the intensity again to doing sort of 4 sessions, maybe 5 a week again, like I was doing previously, and just increasing that intensity. But I did do it slowly over time. And I think that's then what's enabled me now to probably get the same sort of level that I was pre-HA, but just in a very different place, I suppose, and being a lot more mindful of things like sleep. And I take weeks off, and I do all those things that I never would have done then. I really, really hated rest days. And in fairness, I still do now, because I love the days where I go to the gym, but I know how important they are now. So I prioritize rest and recovery so much more. And like I say, if I just feel like, oh, I just fancy a week off, I'll have a week off. Whereas, I previously just wouldn't have done that, because I would have thought, I'll lose all my progress. Whereas now I know enough to know that it absolutely makes not a single bit difference. So
yeah, definitely. See, I train 3 times a week, full body. I need my rest days now.
Oh yeah.
Go into those training sessions rested, fueled, and I'm like, oh my god, what I have just, like, the week before, have just done a deload week, and the vaccine sort of took it out of me, so I was like, well,
oh yeah, it does, yeah.
Go. And again, like, I never would have not gone to the gym, like, ever.
No.
Whereas, yeah, like, this has been sort of like the first week back. I think I've just ovulated, so I didn't have a period last month,
Right.
or around this month, and I think I do not want to speculate, right? But
yeah.
So I was like a little bit ill, and when I split up with my boyfriend like a couple of months ago, and I feel like it was like sort of all a bit of a build up, that I was expecting to be late anyway, and then I had my vaccine the day I was due on, and I didn't come on. And I'm not being one of those conspiracy theorists, but the vaccine has completely wiped me out, so I haven't been that, like, I sort of haven't come on. But yeah, I've had like quite a stressful few, like, I'd say like past month, just with work.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, but it's fine. But I know that I've sort of gone, I know that I give myself the rest days, and I know it's not my time.
Yeah.
And I never, ever, ever thought I would get to this place.
Yeah.
I'm having beginner gains, and I'm looking in the mirror, I'm thinking,
that's the thing, yeah.
my goal is nothing to do with how I look. I just want to get strong. Yeah, I'm looking in the mirror and thinking, hello.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? And I think I'm the same now. It's like, I always wanted to have bigger glutes, you know, like typically you would see on Instagram, it's all about the booty, but I did always want that, but I was way too lean to ever get that. And now, like, I love the fact that I actually do have a bit of a bum again. And like, to me, that's way more actually like satisfying seeing that than it is seeing abs. Like,
100%. I remember looking at, so one of my best friends, Claire, she's also a personal trainer, and she was really, really tiny when she started the gym, and like, as in like naturally, just a young sort of age girl, and just really wanted to get strong and build loads of muscle. And I'd look at her and think like, wow, like that's amazing. And then I'd look at my best friend Zoe, who again came from like just really tall, really, really slim, and just wanted to gain loads of like weight and muscle, and wanted that sort of like really built look. She's getting there. It's been like a few years, obviously, because muscle gain takes so long. But I looked at those two and I was like she looks insane. Both of them look incredible. And but their mentality around it is get strong and eat food. And whereas I was the complete opposite, and I'd look at them and think, like Zoe especially, I'm her trainer, and there's another girl that's now qualified as a personal trainer who came to me, and she looks insane. And I messaged her just saying like, you look amazing, like you're doing, and she was like, thank you so much, like if it wasn't for you I wouldn't have got into the gym. And I just remember thinking like, how funny that I could get people, how funny that I could get people up to that standard, so that I could get them to gain weight, I could get them their shapes, yet I wouldn't do it myself. And I was so scared of like gaining. I remember having this thought of like, I want to gain muscle, but I don't want to gain muscle.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I never actually had that. Even way back when, I was never bothered about getting bulky, but I never ate enough to get bulky. Obviously, I kind of went the opposite direction. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how many girls do still see that, and they don't want to. They think if they gain the muscle, they'll be too bulky and they'll maybe look manly. And actually, it's like the reality is completely different.
I think that, there's probably, I remember like in my past, like a few sort of comments that probably stuck with me, which may have like sort of like continued that story of not wanting to lift sort of weights, you know. But yeah, it's just so different now. And I talk a lot about like why you should recover, and it's because like, guys, if you're listening, like look at Vicky and I, like we've been through it. And I know Vicky, like you obviously tracked and everything like that, and I had to completely come away from that because I had to get away from that diet culture. Like we're both in situations now where like I'd go as far as saying thriving.
That's how I feel now. Exactly. I feel like a completely different person as to what I was going back like a year or so ago. And I don't know if that is even partly to do with just actually having natural hormones in my body as opposed to the pill. And
actual energy as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. And there's so many positives of one just coming off the pill for me, and obviously then getting my period back and just all the changes that does bring. I mean, actually it also brings some negatives because you have a period and that week isn't so fun necessarily, but I definitely wouldn't swap it for the pill again. But
sorry if this is a bit personal and I haven't pre-warned you about this question, but how has it affected your relationship in a positive way, or has that affected things?
I would say it's probably had some impact. I mean, definitely because I exercise a lot less than I used to. So I spend a lot more time with my boyfriend than I previously did. And he's noticed that it's less of a need for me to go to the gym. It's more of a just, I love going to the gym. He definitely prefers the way I look now than how I actually look then, which is quite funny to think, because you almost presume that most men are going to prefer a woman with abs who looks lean, but he's openly said he thought I was too lean, which he didn't necessarily say at the time, but saying he'd say that now. And yeah, he definitely would say he thinks I look better now. And I suppose probably in terms of energy and everything else, it's definitely I have way more energy to do things together with him, and I have a lot less food focus and things like that I probably would have had then, because although I never thought like I was under eating, obviously I was the amount of exercise I was doing, and I did think about food all the time. I mean, I've got to say I still do a little bit now because I am just a big foodie, but I think it was from a different standpoint. I was constantly thinking about what I was eating next, like what was in that meal, and whereas now I'm just so much more chilled around all those kind of things. And going out, I mean, I'll quite happily go out 3-4 times a week and I would never think anything of it, whereas previously I would have said to him, oh, I don't really fancy it, or let's just go out once a week, because then I would maybe blame it on money or something like that, when realistically it was more because I didn't want to have too many meals where I felt like I was eating more than I should have done for the level of leanness I was trying to maintain. So I think there's loads of things actually that have changed in terms of the way we are together, and all for the positive. So
yeah, I completely agree. I think all my relationships have completely changed. I mean, we won't talk about the fact I split up with him, but no, he has amazing. He's lovely. He will never listen to this, but yeah, he's a lovely guy. Just
one of those things.
But like all of my relationships, like just how much more chill I am, and like how much more spontaneous I am, and things.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to rewind us. Your vegginess and now non-vegetarian. Can you tell me that story?
Yeah, so I'd been vegetarian for probably about 16 years. I think since I was about 13, up until I was probably around 27, 28, I was vegetarian, mainly because I just didn't like meat as a child. So it was, I suppose, less for ethical reasons necessarily, but more just that I just didn't enjoy meat. And I just decided one day, as you do when you're 13, that I was going to become vegetarian. And I think, to be honest with you, I think there was quite a few, like if my friends were doing it, and part of it was probably just a bit of a, oh, I'll just try it as well. But I actually stuck to it. But I did occasionally think, oh, I wonder whether I'll like meat now as an adult. So I think once I was like 26, 27, and I started to sometimes get a bit sick, particularly at that point. There was less vegetarian, vegan options in restaurants and in the supermarket. And I started getting a little bit bored with what I was eating, but I was sort of too scared, I suppose, to almost try meat because I just hadn't had it in so long. But then a couple of times I did try the odd bit of meat. It was more through persuasion of certain boyfriends at the time that just didn't understand why you'd want to be vegetarian and not eat meat. So I think I caved in a couple of times it was only to chicken at the time, because that was one of the meats I kind of thought I probably would like chicken. But I probably did that for a couple of years, where I'd occasionally have the odd little bit. And I've got to say, it was then my personal trainer, he said, you'll probably see a change in your body composition if you eat meat, because of the higher quality protein sources and things like that. So for me at the time, I was like, well, if that's what he's saying, then maybe I should try it a little bit more. But actually I realized that I actually did enjoy chicken, and and beef, and that's probably all I would eat. So even now I don't really eat anything beyond chicken and maybe the odd bit of mince, but I do actually still have quite a plant-based vegetarian diet anyway.
Yeah. And how did your digestive system cope with it, reintroducing it?
It was fine, actually, to be honest. I think I've got a pretty sturdy digestive system, I've discovered, because I've never been one who's suffered with like bloating. Even when I've massively increased calories and things like that, I didn't have a lot of digestive issues with it. Whereas I know a lot of people do. So from what I can remember, I don't really think I had many issues with it, but I did do it gradually over time, I suppose. Like, I didn't go from being vegetarian to eating like meat every day. It was a gradual process, and even still now I'll have days where I don't eat any meat, but I do enjoy having a little bit of it and just the variety. And my boyfriend eats meat now, and we live together, so it's easier to cook similar meals, to be honest. So some of it I just do out of ease rather than anything else.
100%. So I went vegan because my dad decided, it was an experiment really. My dad decided to go vegan, and I was like, God, if my dad can do it, I can do it. And mine, I'd read a few things. It was more for my digestion. Like, I have a dairy allergy anyway. Eggs don't sit right with me like, if I eat them by themselves. So I was just a bit like, oh, like, I don't know. There was just something that was just like, yeah, this feels right. And like, not in a restrictive way at all. And then like literally 2 weeks later, I met a guy who was vegan. So then my life over the past year, and I've kept a cycle with it. I actually 1 month into being vegan, I got my period back. But that's nothing to do with being vegan.
No.
Like, that is literally the carb increase and the calorie increase and the de-stressing. But I think my veganism, there was definitely a tendency when I was with him, is that I was a vegan for him, because because he was vegan for ethical reasons, whereas, no offense, but like, I'm not.
No, yeah.
And I have sometimes wondered whether, am I still, as a strict vegan, would it benefit my body to actually have some form of meat? So that's why I was really interested, because we also hear loads of stories that I know Rena McGregor works with what was vegans and transforms them into meat eaters. I've also heard, like, for me, obviously, I saw such a benefit, and I do feel great on being on like, I have no difference. Do you know what I mean? Like, and partly because I think I'm actually eating enough food and stuff like that. Like,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's making sure you're eating enough, because I think it definitely is harder when you're vegetarian and vegan. And I've got to say, I did feel quite a bit better when I started eating meat. But I think part of that was I found it way more filling, because I was probably adding meat to meals that I wasn't having meat with. So I did feel better from introducing meat, because it was probably partly an increase in calories. And just it was more substance, I suppose, so I was fuller for longer. Whereas I did find with veggie meals, I'd be hungry like an hour later quite easily. So I do think my body does do slightly better with the level of like training I do and things like that with eating meat.
The thing is, I wonder whether I would recover better. And like, I mean, like, to be honest, like, beef I could probably turn down. I don't know. You know, like, sometimes, so guys, this is like literally, we're just chatting now. But
Still gone off on a tangent.
Because I'm so interested in hearing about like what affects other people, because you hear some people literally, like Danny from the HA podcast, and don't quote this, but I think it's her, that she literally reintroduced, like, she had to or she didn't have to, but she reintroduced red meat, and that really helped her with her hormones because of like the iron and stuff. So I'm just always like quite interested to hear it, because, and obviously conscious about triggering people, but I just think it's really important that we talk about all of these different options, like the fact that you went from veggie to eating meat. And because I eat a lot of substitute, which I'm still a bit like, well, that can't be that great for me because it's all processed.
I've gone through periods of time where, like, I've had the same thoughts, because I did go through like times of eating quite a lot of tempeh and tofu, and I was thinking, oh, is all this meat substitutes good or not? And I think I remember reading something about, and if is it tempeh or tofu, or both of them, that could have some effect on hormones, or I mean, it was probably absolutely rubbish, but it did make me question whether sometimes, and they often are low in calories, vegetarian meat substitute, or can be, like particularly tofu, it's quite low in calories and things.
Yeah, and I've sometimes wondered whether, like, is this a subconscious, because I would often say to him when I was with him, I worry that how vegan I am, I know you're even not vegan or not, but like how vegan I was like, I'm really scared that this is a way of me pushing my disordered eating to one side. And like I worked through it, and like, I mean, we're not together now, and I've just sort of carried, like, it's just been like, sometimes the thought of meat makes me feel a little bit but sometimes the thought of a Nando's makes me feel like, hello.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like, you know, like when like if my dad comes and visits and they all get buns and stuff, I have to be the awkward one that has to go find a vegan cake. And like, do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's like, I'm on an easy life.
And I do think, I mean, I've heard quite a lot in podcasts and things about people turning vegan. Obviously, there's been a big rise in the popularity of it. And a lot of people talking about how some people using it as a way to mask eating disorders, because it's quite easy, to turn around and say, oh, you know, I'm vegan, I can only have the salad, or, you know, there's no options, or I can't eat, like you say, the cake, or I can't have this and that because it's not vegan. And I think I do think there probably is people who have almost decided to go towards vegan, partly because they think it's maybe a healthier lifestyle, but also because actually it's a way for them to restrict without people almost realizing they're restricting.
And I won't lie, like those questions have come across my mind, like, am I doing this for the right reasons?
And
so
I think it's easy to convince yourself you are.
Yeah, definitely. But then I'm also like, but I am also the person that if everyone's getting a cake, I will go hunt down the vegan cake.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? So it's like I'm not having anything.
No, so
So I'm a bit like, oh, I don't really know. But then also I've thought about recently, from like going back to training, it being like going quite heavy with my training and like loving it. I'm like, oh God, like, would this help with my recovery? I don't know.
It's one of those things, I suppose, and unless you actually tried it, you probably wouldn't know. And it's whether you can bring yourself to try it. But definitely for me, I do think it did help with recovery, and like I say, just feeling fuller and more satisfied with food. And
so would you say you're in a 10 times better place than you were, and the
massively
worth it?
Massively. I think, I mean, I can't actually imagine me still being in that same position now. I do feel, like I said before, I feel like a completely different person now, and a completely different mindset on food and exercise, and just generally about my body in general. Like, I can't imagine ever aspiring to have abs ever again in my entire life. I'll take a bum over abs any day.
Like, it's all, I don't know, like, it just, life feels a little bit easier. That's the way I can describe it. Or less intense as well.
Yeah, it definitely, I think when you can let go of a lot of like that restriction, and I do think a lot of it is around control. When you can let go of that, it opens up so many other opportunities for different things. And I really actually don't care what other people think about the way I look anymore, which I really used to. I used to really value what other people thought of me, whether I was the leanest in the fitness class or leanest at the fitness event, or I could walk around in a sports bra and have my abs out, and that was great. And now I couldn't be any further from that in terms of I don't care. I'll quite happily still walk around the gym with a sports bra and shorts, and I really am genuinely not bothered. And actually, it is funny, I do get some of the old guys in the gym coming up to it now, and they've known me since the beginning because I've gone to the same gym. And it's actually quite interesting how many people do genuinely come up to me and say, like, I'm not just saying this, but like, you look so much better, you look so much healthier, you look strong, but you look healthier for it. And I get those comments all the time now, and that's lovely to hear. But actually, I've done it for me, and I don't really care what other people think, but it's also nice to hear those things as well.
Of course, yeah. And I don't know, but I just feel like your aura shines different.
Oh,
your energy just shines so different.
I definitely get those comments on Instagram a lot about how, like, people use the term glowing, don't they? And just they'll say you actually look happier. And it's funny when I compare some of my photos going back a year or so ago to now, like I do think, God, like I definitely do look much happier now than I did then.
Yeah, I know I do a few comparisons, and like honestly, like I just look at myself, and some people might not notice it, whereas like in my eyes, I'm thinking like I look dead, like
yeah,
sort of like hollow, or just like not really there.
Yeah, like I'm so gaunt, and
Yeah.
like part of me looks at me and thinking, how did it not just like snapping off? Like I really do. It's crazy because you get so absorbed in it you don't even realize. But it's not until you look back and actually think, yeah, I definitely wasn't in a good place for where I should be as a woman. You know.
Definitely not. Yeah, Vicky, I feel like I could chat to you for hours.
I know.
I'll let you go and have your evening. Thank you so much. Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, Clean Bakes on Instagram. Trying a bit of YouTube, but YouTube to me is just one of those things at the moment. I've got a few videos anyway on YouTube, and that's Clean Bakes as well. And if you're interested in recipes, I've got a blog, cleanleanbakes.com.
Nice. Yeah, definitely go check her out. The YouTube is fabulous. It's so lovely to hear more people sharing their story.
Yeah, exactly. And if that's it, if I can only share my story with HA and help a few people, then I'm happy with that.
I'm gonna have your jammy dodger oats for dessert tonight. Right, I'm having jammy dodger, but I don't have any jammy dodgers, so I'm basically having raspberry jammy oats for dessert.
Yeah, oh, so good.
Yeah,
I'm definitely loving baked oats right now.
Thank you so much, guys. Please review the podcast, give us a 5-star or whatever, but don't give me a negative. That really keep me up at night. And
definitely not.
If you're on YouTube, then make sure you subscribe to both mine and Vicky's channel, and follow us both on Instagram, and we shall see you soon.